Security Halt Podcast. Let's go.
You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare. With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands. A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land. Job was to dispose of enemy personnel. To kill. Period. Win by attrition.
Fucking college.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I had to catch the red eye back I had to fly out to California overnight.
Oh, man.
And yeah, so I know what you mean.
We're hurting, but we're going to make it through, man. John, thank you for being back here, man. It's good to see you.
You too, man.
If you are not a fan of the show and you haven't listened to their previous episodes, it's John Dailey, mild-mannered American by day. But in reality, our man here has lived quite the life. You've been part of something that is it's just amazing. You're now inked in history forever, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So let's dive in, man. The
Sure.
book comes out in a few weeks. Tough, Rugged Bastards, a memoir of a life as Marine Special Operations. For a lot of us, we tend to think of MARSOC as this big thing that just popped up overnight one day, but that could be further from the truth. So today on Security Out Podcast, John, let's dive into your book, my man.
Oh, appreciate it. Yeah, it'll be on shelves here in, I think, a month from today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty crazy.
Yeah. So let's take it back to the beginning, man. Det 1, all those years ago. How did that come into existence?
Right. So it actually, the story starts a little bit further back, and I can't remember if we talked about it last time, but after the failed attempt to rescue American hostages in Iran, the government decided that they needed a special operations command. And when that was formed in 1987, the SEALs joined, the Green Berets joined, the Air Force pararescue CCT guys joined, and the Marines were asked to contribute Force Recon to that, and the Marine Corps said, "No, we're good." So, and that led to a lot of consternation, among the Force Recon Marines, because money and equipment and training and things like that and missions really weren't as easy to come by for us as they were for our brothers in SoCal. Yeah. And the first time I really saw it was I was the platoon sergeant for a Force Recon platoon. Went on our deployment on ship in 2001. Sitting in Australia in a bar when 9/11 happened. Right. When we got to setting off the coast of Afghanistan, the MU commanders, colonel, came in and said, "Hey, I want to send your boys in early to do the reconnaissance of the site before we send anybody in." And we realized that in order to do it, we were going to need to borrow some special operations aircraft. And we went and asked, and like, "Hey, can with our hands out, right? Can we borrow some helos?" And they're like, "Nah, we think we'll just have the SEALs do it." So, the SEALs, and great guys, but they did the initial landing in Afghanistan to the south, not up north where the SF guys were at, but to establish what was FOB Rhino.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went in shortly thereafter. But that was, seeing it from, I was pissed, right? Seeing it from, having to go back and tell my guys, "Hey, yeah, we're stand down. We're not doing this because."
And worse, the SEALs are going.
Right, exactly. But, on our way back, to the States from Afghanistan in early 2002, we started hearing rumors that, hey, there's going to be an increase in special operation forces, and the Marines have been told that they're going to participate. And, of course we didn't believe it. Right. So it took a while. And so that went from, 2002 to, I think it was either late 2002 or early 2003 when I finally got, the guy who was selected to run it, Colonel Coates, called me in and was like, "Hey, do you want to be a part of this thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I really, really do." So he was tasked with putting together. It wound up being less than 100 men. A test unit that was going to work for SOCOM for a period of 2 years, and so he picked me to be one of the team leaders. And when he called me into his office and told me, "Hey, you can pick your team. Find the guys that you want. We'll get them." But the stipulation was that they're tough, rugged bastards. And I filed that away in my head. And I'm like, you know what? If I ever write a book, that's going to be the title of it right there.
Just read notebook, annotated.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I'm like, that's the easy part's done. I got the title. Now I just got to write it. But so we got put together out of that roughly 100 men. There was about a third of us were were from Force Recon, Recon Marines. About another third were intel guys, and they had gone all out. I mean, they were pulling Marines back from the NSA in different places. So we had really heavy hitters on the on the intel side of the house, which was critical to our success.
Yeah.
And then the other third were our communicators and JTACs and admin, logistics guys, mechanics, all the stuff. And we were short. We were really short on all of that. So a lot of those guys were doing, more than one job, and then they were manning a machine gun when we went out for raids, right? Because we just didn't have the ass to do much else. But so we trained up, really not initially not knowing where we were going to deploy to. We had assumed that it was going to be Afghanistan, so we were spending a lot of time in the mountains. A lot of with the expectation that we were going to be doing, long range reconnaissance missions. And then about probably halfway into our training cycle that was allotted, they said, "Hey, now you're going to Iraq, and the focus will be on direct action." So we shifted gears, shifted our training, and prepared for that. And then in 2004, we deployed. And so we deployed. It was a strange relationship. We deployed underneath a Naval Special Warfare Task Group. So it's kind of like a little more like a ODB sort of.
Yeah.
And we were like a SEAL platoon or like a big ass ODA. And when we got there, a lot of the 100 men that we had were like cherry picked and sent. So a lot of the intel guys were pulled from us to go support other SEAL teams. And so we were, an assault element of about roughly 30 guys. Yeah, beefy. I mean, we definitely brought some firepower.
Yeah, that's having to get back into that mindset, and it's happened so often. Like no Green Berets ever put together a long range training calendar and actually executed it completely. Everything changes right before you go. How did the guys take that initial like, oh shit, like we're not going to Afghanistan, we're going to Iraq? Because that period in time in Iraq was chaotic. That was not a pleasant time. And there's a lot of people that can recall back then nobody cared about Afghanistan. It was like, wow, like, hey, Afghanistan's like whatever, dude. You want to get combat, you're going to go to Iraq. Like those were some wild West days.
Yeah, they were. When we stood up, I still had two of the guys who were going to be in my team were still in OIF 1. All right. So, we had to wait for them to get back before we could. So when we started, I mean, you start a unit from scratch. I mean, we had nothing. All right. So we were like borrowing buildings to kind of hang our hats in, but, no weapons, no equipment. The only thing that like every recon Marine has is their own Alice pack, right? Everybody had their own ruck, that had been more shit sewn onto it and modified how they wanted it. So the first couple of months, I mean, that's really all we did. We just load up our rucks and go out, on 20-mile rucks, just through the hills of Pendleton. And that kind of set the baseline of expectation that, hey, because we were a very senior group of guys. I mean, we had, as a team leader, I was an E7 and I was like the junior guy. We had E7s, E8s, which is very, or before MARSOC was very irregular in reconnaissance units. Usually, E5, E6 were team leaders. As an E7, I had just come from running a 30-man platoon in Afghanistan, and now I was in charge of 4 dudes. So kind of nice. but it set the expectation. You won't give a shit how senior you are or how good you think you are. Throw your ruck on, and the expectation is that you become a tough, rugged bastard if you aren't one already.
Exactly.
And so guys took it kind of in stride. I mean, really, it's knowing that you're going to do less. Long range patrolling, which sucks, and more just blowing open doors and going in and shooting bad guys. So nobody was too terribly sad about that.
Nobody went and turned in their gear and said, I'm out of here. Getting on the ground and having your guys being cherry picked and losing, because I mean, you created and you built teams and you enhanced their capabilities, and then you get there and they're like, hey, we're going to take your awesome intel dudes. How'd your leadership and how were you able to take that in stride and just focus on the bigger picture, which is like, hey, the rep of this entire thing, like it's an experiment. Like we still have to go out there and produce and bring back some relevant numbers and show and prove that this is a good concept.
Yeah.
How'd you guys take that all in stride?
I mean, we were, absolutely annoyed by it when it happened, right? Because attached to my team, I had a human guy, a human intelligence, a SIGINT guy, a all source analyst, and they essentially worked for me, during our training, and that was phenomenal. But so we were annoyed initially, but what we quickly came to realize was that when we took our dudes and sent them like all over Iraq, we had guys in the green zone, liaison at the OGA and things like that. Suddenly we had access to like everybody's intel. So we had we could very, very quickly, we had a better overall picture of what was going on in the country than anybody did. And that wound up being paying huge dividends. So the first mission that we did, we essentially got into country, and we were not replacing a SEAL team, another team. So we were kind of the first guys in the area. So normally you would show up and, they'd be like, hey, here's a bunch of leftover target folders that we didn't have time for. We had nothing. We got, I tell the story all the time, but we got met by Jocko. So, and I had deployed with him when he was an enlisted guy, years before. A couple of us had, so we knew him, a little bit. And he was like, "Hey, man, we really got nothing." This was his deployment before Ramadi and his task unit bruiser. So he's like, we don't have a whole lot. We know that there are these 2 guys that everybody's looking for, but we don't know, really who they are or where they are or anything about them. So it really came down to us. We had to make some shit happen. And one of the intel analysts that we had just started like digging through intel reports. And he realized something that nobody else had kind of put together. There had been a number of, I think it was like 23 interpreters, Iraqi interpreters that were working for us that had been killed over, a series of a couple of months. It's all like executed, it wasn't like, heart attacks, anything like that, it was, and so he started like kind of just doing his thing and figuring out that, hey, they were all connected to this one person. And, hey, this person still works as an interpreter. And,
oh shit.
Yeah. So he's, like, hey, if you guys can go find this person, grab this person, then, we'll probably be able to make something happen.
Yeah.
And so I got picked to lead this first mission, and it was because it was unusual. We had to take a SEAL with us who was, I don't know if he was supposed to like keep an eye on us but he knew the territory a little bit, and he had some skills. One of our human intelligence folks went, another Marine, myself, and then this person that we were going after was a female. A female Turk.
Damn.
Yeah. So they're like, man, you got to have a female to search this. So we were like, we don't have any females. So we looked around, and we were adjacent and working with a Polish Grom platoon, and they had a female operator who is total badass. All right. So Kate comes with us. So the first mission we do, we've got a SEAL, Polish female. We're in cities and, light-skinned, sedans, just driving, cruising through Baghdad, looking for this lady.
Welcome to Special Operations.
Yeah. So, we went to the place where she was supposed to work, like the contract company that, and they're like, oh, well, she's not here. She works at this other place. So we're, all day long, we get to a place and they're like, oh, she's not here anymore. She's over here. So we're getting further and further and further, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Finally, we locate the place that she had most recently worked, and she had quit, like unexpectedly, know. So we're like, yeah, that seems a little fishy, maybe. Yep. But, we convinced them to, and we couldn't tell them why we wanted her, but we convinced them to call her in and tell her say that, they had a paycheck for her or something. Yeah. So they bring her in, and a guy, drives her in. So we wind up grabbing both of them, taking them back. And at that point, 2004, we had our own interrogation facility. This was just a little bit before Abu Ghraib. I mean, like a month before, right? Before kind of changed a lot of things.
Rules were still a little different.
But so we, as soon as they start questioning this lady, it became very apparent quickly that yes, she was responsible, but she was unwitting, right? So she had, it was like a, reverse honeypot situation, right? Some dude had, because she was not a very attractive woman, but some good looking dude had, hit on her and, befriended her, and then said, hey, can you give me some addresses and things like this that I need to hire some interpreters or whatever. So she had kind of handed out the phone book of the recall roster. And when she realized that, right, there's the saying that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, right? So she was pissed, obviously. So she was like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. I'll give you him, his friends. Yeah. And that's how we went out that night. We grabbed him, went to his place of business, and, just happened to be, I don't know what he had, like a VHS store, VHS cassette tapes, but, they were also producing propaganda and bombs and everything else. So, we kind of put ourselves on the, with a win on the board quickly.
Hell yeah.
And then from there, you just shake that guy and
exactly. Intel drives operations. And we have to give a shout out to all those those Sing It, all the ents, all you hardworking. Yeah, we pick on you, we call you nerds, but at the end of the day, you guys drive the operations. And that's why 18 Fox, that's why the warrant function in the 18 Fox, those two nerds going in, doing deep diving into targets. Like, that's the beauty of it. Like, that's like when they took away your intel guys, I can only imagine at first for that brief moment of like, great. But then you realize, like, wait a second. I've got Marines that are plugged in everywhere. We're still in this fight. That's a beautiful, I can't wait to read that in the book, because it just shows the importance of every other support element that's getting you guys in the fight. And they get lost, they get forgotten about. They get forgotten about
all the time. Yeah. It's really easy to forget about those guys. But we had, we deployed with, for some reason, they decided they wanted to send us with these, G-Wagons, Mercedes-Benz, which are great for driving to the chow hall on base, but they're not, not big enough to really put a whole lot in. Yeah. We got them for Afghanistan, and they were pretty good for Afghanistan. I'd had them, in 2001, driving around Afghanistan. It's light enough where you could almost get a bunch of guys who just like lift it over things if you need to. But not quite. But you can put them in helos. You can do a lot with them. But so we realized that they weren't going to be useful in Iraq. So right before we left, we got the only Humvees that we could get, and they were like barely running. They were this this was still in the days when the no armor on vehicles. I mean, not even the pretense of like doors. We just had gun mounts on every door. Everybody rode sideways, with a 249 or or M4 out the door or something. So we had like porcupines with just tons of barrels and just kind of hoping somebody would hoping somebody would screw with you. And this was before the really big IED threat started. But we had the mechanics that you could hear them just in there, just turning those vehicles into something that was useful. So I mean, from those guys, the communicators, the everybody, the admin guys. I mean, you don't, the mission doesn't happen. I had the really great opportunity. Like I told you, I was out in California. I flew out quickly to talk to the Marine Corps Basic Reconnaissance course that was graduating today. I got to talk to him on Wednesday. And, that was one of the things I was, realize that it's a team, you can build a big team around you, full of all sorts of people that want to help you because they want to accomplish the mission and they are good at their job too. Or you can just sit around wondering why everybody else sucks and they're not as awesome as you. Yeah. I was in the first, I was in that second category, for a while in my younger years. And then you start to realize, man, read like Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. And you're like, you know what? Life's a lot better when you bring everybody on the team and let the pros, be pros at their job.
It's so true, man. It's absolutely, it enhances your ability to really go after the enemy. Like, no one wants to work with somebody that thinks that they're just the cream of the crop, greatest thing on earth. Like, who gives a shit what badge, funny hat you have on your head? You all wear the same uniform and you're all part of the same friggin' team. Support each other. You can't do it alone. From motor pool guys to your S function individuals, like, they all help you get in there. And once you started getting that when you get that first little momentum on that operation, how fast did things pick up?
Oh, it was incredible. I mean, we were just going out every night. A lot of times, just multiple targets in a night. We'd go for weeks where it was just that cycle every single night, and that was really what we were also very comfortable with that. I mean, it's what as Force Recon platoon, you do a lot of training for direct action, close quarter battle. And so that wasn't outside of our scope at all. So then they were like, hey, this is also a test, right? So we've got to, try to throw some other things at you and see how you perform. So we got pulled to provide a security detail for the Iraqi vice president.
Shit.
When they had the interim government. Before the first election. So like we were in charge of the Paul Burmer or whatever was the ambassador who was kind of running the country. And they're like, hey, we're going to make this interim government and then you all can hold your own elections. And so they had president, two vice presidents, and we were responsible for the Kurdish vice president, who was, had the biggest threats against his life because all Obviously. Iraqis, aren't huge fans of the Kurds. And this guy had been, in the Peshmerga. He'd gotten after fighting with Saddam and everything. So he was a badass back in his day, but now he was a politician and. So we did that for a while. I got to lead the advanced team, just again, doing a whole lot of driving, checking out, route reps and things like that, checking out facilities before they had meetings and really, really cool time. But that had kind of pulled us off of the hunt. We were really hunting these two guys that they had initially told us about. And, again, our intel dudes were starting to dig up info, get a little, we got relatively close to one of them who was kind of codenamed X, right? They just called him X. We had, this guy had been a part of Saddam's, the former regime element. He was one of the Deca card dudes. And we found out, or the intel guys found out that he had been responsible for massacring, or at least assisting in the massacre of a whole bunch of Kurds. All right. So he was also now like heavily involved in bombs, right? And they were, they were running bombers, funding them and things like that. So there was a big push to prevent people from coming out to the real elections. So we had wound up detaining a couple of his relatives, and we hit like his family compound essentially, and started to notice that, hey, all of these dudes look alike. there's a really strong family resemblance, right? So we're like, all right. So we didn't get him that time, but then we go on the security detail, and then they pull us off of it because we have a lead on this guy. So we grab him, and we don't know it's him. We're pretty sure because he looks just like the rest of the family. One of his relatives pointed him out. It's like, yeah, that's the guy. But he wouldn't admit to it. He's like, that's not me, man. That's not me. And finally, we brought in a bunch of his family, and they were like, yeah, that's him. Right? And he's like, all right, it's me, but I'm not a bad guy. I'm just a farmer. I don't.
Classic. I'm just a farmer.
Just a farmer. But like, man, you hold up really, really well under interrogation for a farmer. So we can't get at this point. He was going to go in front of an Iraqi court. Right, that was the way that things were being dealt with then. Right, he was so they were going to have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was this guy, and we had no hard evidence. All right, so we somebody came up with the idea. They're like, hey, well, we know the Kurdish vice president. Why don't we see if we could fly this guy out to the his kind of hometown where the Kurds hang out. I think up around Erbil, and what would happen if we just handed him over to the Kurds? And we're like, ooh, that would be bad for him, right? And like, well, but what if he thought he was being handed over to the Kurds? And we're like, yeah, let's check and make sure that that's legit, that we can do this, right? So we wound up taking him out. He gets handed off. When the bag comes off his head, he's in a room with a bunch of angry Kurds with, obviously aren't there to like play games, and he doesn't know that we've got guys behind him, watching, and he just starts admitting to everything. Right? He starts talking, and he wants to go back into the U.S. custody, and so man, you gotta talk, bro. So he does, and so that led to kind of taking a pretty big player off the board and moving us closer to the big guy. This guy had been another deck of card guy that had been, eluding everybody. And again, it was our intel dudes that were able to get a source like, as this driver. They recruited a guy, got him into the network, and got him in as this guy's driver. And ultimately, we're able to roll him up, at a lunch, at a fine dining establishment in downtown Baghdad at noon.
That's fucking awesome. Like that's 100%. That success is so amazing, but it's short lived. Like you go back, you debrief, you write it up on the whiteboard, and then reset the clock, and everybody starts redeving. Everybody has their marching orders, refit your kit, and start deving out the next target. And man, in that period of time, there was no shortage of it. There was always another asshole to go after.
Oh yeah, it's like people always call it whack-a-mole.
Yes.
You hit one, and then a couple more will pop up. But so they were trying to give us some other mission sets to prove whether we could handle those. So the security detail thing we did, and then we did a lot of coalition sniper support during the JOF was really kicking off. They would not let us, which a lot of us were kind of pissed about, but Fallujah was obviously going on while we were there too, but that was a Marine fight. Yeah. They didn't want us. They're like, yeah, we know you can support Marines. We want to So they kept us from there, but they sent us to Najaf, which wound up being a pretty eventful time.
And what was that like?
That was so I got to take a team of about 8 snipers, and we had a lot of guys who were sniper qualified, and we did quite a bit of training. So we were pretty well prepped. But so Najaf, if you're not, I mean, a lot of the readers probably aren't terribly familiar with it. It's not that big of a town, but it has on the outskirts is the largest cemetery in the world. Right, it's been a cemetery for thousands of years, and it's a lot of like above ground graves. I mean, it's like a little city, right, made out of mud, little structures. Below ground tunnels. It's just a nightmare. It would be like an absolute like fighting in Way City, right? Combined with trench warfare, combined with like whatever you could imagine. And that's what the Marine Corps was looking at, the Marines and the Army. In the middle of the city is this mosque called the Imam Ali Mosque, and it's the 3rd holiest site for Shias, I think. So it's big golden dome, like a lot of them, but that had been taken over, the complex around the mosque by the Mahdi army. And so they had like 5,000 or 10,000 fighters in there. There was a lot of concern about the mosque. They're like, hey, if we accidentally destroy this mosque, then we're going to have every Muslim in the world pissed at us. Yeah. So it was very restrictive, on where forces could go. The Marines were out. The Marine Expeditionary Unit was out in the desert waiting to start fighting in the cemetery. There was an Army Cav unit that I was attached to initially, and then some other units around. But we showed up with the Poles and a sniper team, or some snipers. The SEALs had some teams. There were SF teams, and we kind of ringed the place. And they let us, nobody else could go in to the city, beyond a certain phase line. Yeah. Right. Because fear of damaging the mosque. So the only people that were allowed to go beyond that were us, the soft guys, and only snipers. We took a JTAC with us, and we had to be very, very careful with that. But it was such a cool opportunity. We got in very, very close. So, we were looking down into the mosque facility. And over the course of a week and a half, according to, SIGINT reports that we got, the sniper teams we had whacked, several hundred dudes, and like something like 50 to 70 other snipers. I mean, there was a lot of there was a whole lot of like Stalingrad shit going on, right? Like sniper battle stuff that was just, why I'd read books about, but we don't really focus a whole lot on that. But we were, just all like, hey man, try to remember back the books you've read about the sniper battles. And there was a lot of really old school, sticking hats up on sticks and trying to put different guys and trying to triangulate, where guys were. Yeah. I remember one position we were in just getting rocked. We had a round hit, and then like threw up concrete and hit one of the guys. So I mean, guy was close. A couple of times we stuck up the hat, and they weren't that. They weren't hitting the hat, but they were coming close. So I mean, rounds like ping, ping, and we're trying to find this guy, and I see something. Catches my eye in a building that's like 200 meters away, and see a brick. There's like dust falling, and this guy pulls out a brick, and then you see him, behind the muzzle, and he pretty well, pretty good tactics, like muzzle it, stick out of the hole or anything. So, and he would take a shot or two, put it back, move to another room, and pull out the brick. And we're like, man. So we had one sasser with this 50 cal, and there was an Army team not too far from us that had another. And so we called him up like, dude, get over, pointed out the building to him. And we're like, wait till a brick comes out. Let's make sure we're communicating and just fucking unload, with Rofus ammo. So this, brick comes out again. And, our guy started, it's just like kind of like talking guns, right?
Yeah.
Just rubbled, with this exploding ammo. Boom, 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 boom. Like 10 rounds in a mag, went to, 2 mags each. Just had dropped most of the wall on top of this guy. So it was, that's what it was, kind of day in, day out. And then ultimately the guys decided that it wasn't a fight they wanted to continue. So they all turned in their weapons and prevented, a whole bunch of Marines and soldiers from having to get into a really, really ugly, street to street fight that was already going on in Fallujah. So we were able to avoid that. And that was definitely,
that's huge. That's huge
awesome win. Experience. Yeah.
And, talk about the morale and the adverse effect for the enemy. Like when you see, when your dudes are able to quell that with precision sniper fire, and like, fuck, that must have been like, that's a great check the block for well trained.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, that was one of the most rewarding missions, that we did, I think.
Yeah.
It's great time.
Yeah. How did it all, and what was the length of time for that rotation? Because back then, conventional forces, like Army was like doing years, and soft rotations, you're looking about 7-8 months. Like, what were your guys on the ground? How long were you guys on the ground for?
For about 7 months. Yeah. And then, we wound up that final X guy. I think that may have been our last mission. If not, it was like really, really close. We were spinning up for another couple, but, so we worked, right up to the end, and, kind of capped it off with a pretty big win. So towards the end of that, the deployment, the Marine Corps and the Navy sent out the, kind of bean counter guys to the Center for Naval Analysis. And they're like, trying to quantify, hey, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well did you guys do? What missions did you perform that are in the soft spectrum? Who did you work for? And so it was a whole lot of, them trying to figure out what their report was going to say. Because still we knew that, and we, although we did, cherry pick our intel guys, the Navy commander that we worked for was, there were people in naval special warfare and plenty of people in, across, in the Marine Corps and SOCOM and USOC that did not want us to be successful or weren't interested in Marines and SOF. But the commander, Bill Wilson, was the guy who was our boss.
Yeah.
And he gave us, every, and he said, he was like, hey, man, if a SEAL, team had showed up with all this intel support, I would have taken it, from them too. Right. So he's like, y'all had all this extra capacity. So he was a straight shooter with us and came back and was very, complimentary and recommending that MARSOC continue. And the everybody, everything came back saying, yeah, this is good. Let's keep this thing going. And then of course, I think it was General Brown, who was the commander of SOCOM at the time and the Commandant of the Marine Corps, had to go in to the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, right? And they were like, hey, these guys did great, phenomenal, but we don't think this should continue.
Yeah.
And Rumsfeld was like, well, fuck you. It's going to continue. And, in fact, make it, instead of, the current structure, build a several thousand person component of SOCOM. And so that was, we were a little bit pissed about that because, we really thought when we got back that they were going to say, hey, kind of double inside, half of you split, getting some new guys and kind of build slowly.
Yeah.
And that would have been, we wouldn't have been able to produce, we would have produced, quality.
Yeah.
But we, couldn't have produced the quantity.
Yeah. It's like an
that they were
entrepreneur,
looking
like
for.
scaling.
Yeah. And we were, they were, you can't take 100 dudes and turn them into a several thousand person, organization with G-level shops and, everything that's necessary. So we got back from the deployment and we spent another year just kind of showing up every day. And there was always a rumor, right? There were rumors that they were going to take us and send us to Bragg, and we were going to, work there. There were, as a whole unit, there was rumors that we were going to split and have a detachment 2. There was, rumors that we were going to work for the Marine Corps and go back to Afghanistan, and they're just so we just trained. We're like, all we can do is keep training and get ready. And then, while this year was going on, there were, some of the guys, especially some of the other team leaders who were like, hey, dude, I'm retiring, or hey, dude, I gotta. So we were slowly starting to kind of dwindle down in numbers. And then after about a year, the decision was made that like, hey, we're going to form February of 2006. They're like, hey, you're starting a MARSOC component. And we were not sucked up into it. Some of us went to it, some of us didn't. But so I, the day we kind of folded the Det 1 flag, I jumped in my car and drove out to North Carolina and to help start the school. So that's the job I got.
That's where you went. Did you feel like, was it bittersweet, or did you feel like it was transitioning into what it should have transitioned into?
It was absolutely bittersweet. We were a little bit pissed about it that we weren't more involved in the process, and not me, but our leadership.
Yeah, the guys actually did the work.
Yeah, and there's some, and I talk a little bit about it in the book, and I've learned a little bit more, since then. There was some decisions made that probably weren't the best. There was, some cases, our Colonel Coates, the guy who is our boss, burned a lot of bridges to make us successful.
Yeah.
He was basically like, hey, I don't, give me what I need to run this unit to deploy and everything. So there wasn't, we probably weren't, or as the Det 1 guys weren't involved as much as possible in the formation of MARSOC. There was also, that wasn't totally on them either. There were some times, I think, when we pushed back and we're like, we don't want to talk with you guys. You're going to do what you want anyway. But, once the decision was made, I definitely knew that I wanted to be a part of it. And so I called, I got on the phone with, I think y'all call them detailers, like we call it the monitor, right? The guy who's, responsible for all the recon Marines in the Marine Corps. And it's like, hey, man, what can you get me out at MARSOC?
Yeah.
And, preferably, I knew at that point that, at this, I was getting pretty senior, and especially at the time, like I was probably not going to deploy again in a team setting. That's changed since then. At this point, I was an E8, and I was like very close to E9. And I mean, now we have E8s go out on as company ops chiefs and company SEAs and things like that. But it was looking kind of like my fighting days were over. So, being able to go to the school and pass on everything that I'd learned seemed like a good idea. So, and it was, it was a blast getting that, taking that from 4 or 5 guys that we had to, now we've got, 250 instructors, and we're still, MARSOC is about the size of SWIC,
Yeah.
but so our Raider Training Center now is, roughly 250 instructors. We, teach in, 30 different courses, that range from, blowing stuff up, shooting people, to language, to intel and comm and things like that. So it's been a huge learning experience for me, and really awesome to still be able to be a part of it now all these years later.
Yeah. It's part of the warrior, path. You have to go back and teach. You have to go back and impart knowledge. Like the organizations that we're blessed to have been a part of, they think you don't just materialize this knowledge. Like it's hard earned, and then it's given back to the individuals that are coming in to replenish the force. Like we age, we break, and we phase out. But if you're in a capacity where you can give back by teaching and mentoring and coaching the next generation of warriors, do it. You have to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and that's just the other day when I was in California, I got to go out with a couple of Vietnam Recon Marines.
Nice.
And they're guys that used to come, when I was a young guy, and talk to us. And, we would all just be sitting there like, so eager to hear all the lessons.
Yeah.
And you realize that, a lot of things change, but the fundamentals never do.
Yep.
The fundamentals of patrolling, the fundamentals of mission planning, the fundamentals of what it takes to be a hard guy doing hard things, right? Those things aren't subject to change. And it, just like I was talking about in Joff, thinking back to the World War II book things that I read, tactics, it happens all the time when I was, think back to, hey, I know this guy who was in Vietnam that told me this. So these guys with MacV-SOG who, told me this, and, maybe that would work in this situation.
Yeah.
So, and now it's, guys from GWAT, telling, new guys, hey, start putting this stuff away, because it'll, read books, learn, because, one of these days you don't, that day on September 11th, 2001, we went on that deployment thinking it was going to be like any other deployment. You go, you stay on ship, you jack a bunch of steel, you have some good training, different places throughout the South Pacific, through the Gulf. You have a lot of time off, to go out and see things, and you come back, generally speaking, hopefully we save some money. You're in the best shape of your life. You can, your bench max has gone up, and you read a lot or whatever. Yep. And that, that changed in a heartbeat. And you really, you get it. I had been told this, but it didn't really sink in until then, that you go to war when the balloon goes up with the people that you have, the stuff that you have, and the training, most specific, importantly, that you have. So there's not time to say, oh, well, let's set up some training now. Right. You're like, man, you gotta, bring your own bottle. Right? go with what you got.
Yeah. That's so damn true. And the other great thing is, you've come full circle in this journey. I would imagine that you're just like me. Growing up as a kid, you picked up those books that were written and by those warriors that came before us, World War II era veterans from Vietnam, all those great stories. And now you've got your own chapter in history, in Marine Corps history. Like, this is amazing. How does that feel? Like, knowing that, like, holy shit, like, I have this impact now. Like, some kid's going to pick up your book, read it, and say, you know what? I'm going to be a Raider.
Wow. Yeah. That's, I honestly don't think I thought of that. I've been so focused on everything else, but yeah, that, like I said, I look back to the guys, my helmet for a pillow, or for World War II, all the books, and then, especially all the Vietnam books. There were so many of, about the LERPs, about Force Recon Diary, just, so many great books. And I was reading, as a high schooler. Yeah. So yeah, I hadn't really sunk in. Somebody might read that and say, this is what I want to do. Yeah. That's pretty fucking cool.
That's fucking amazing. That's why I tell guys, I mean, you never know what your impact's going to be into the next generation of warfighters. if you keep all your stories, if you keep all the greatness you've done, I mean, 20 years, there's so many other individuals out there that have these stories and this experience. And that's why I say, write them, get them out there. It's not about bravado. It's not about glory and awesome. And like, yeah, it could be profitable. It could be great.
Mm-hmm.
But think about the impact. Think about what you experienced in those years in Iraq or Afghanistan and how it could help some young kid in some environment realize that he could have that same impact. Hey, my nation calls me to serve. I read this great book. I want to do that. I want to be adventurous. I want to go into the unknown.
Yeah.
Write your stories. Be like John. Be willing to go out there and explore. Like, look, I get it. Not everybody's going to be part of that one. But there are other moments in our GWAT history that you may have been a part of. And it's needed. I want to read those stories. And I know John does as well. And like I said, some young kid out there is going to pick up a book and read it and be enticed to go in the Marine Corps, go in the Army, or God forbid, become a Green Beret. Go out there and live your life and then share it with the world. And John, before I let you go, one last thing, if you could give some encouraging words to those veteran authors out there, anything, any advice when it comes to putting your story out there?
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, Denny, I think there's absolute value in writing it down, right? Whether you ever want anyone else to see it or not. The act of writing it down can take it out of your head and put it on paper, right? It doesn't have to like take up the space in your head if you don't want it to. But, that's a reason to write things down, just having it, because you get old, you will start forgetting things, right? I had to call a lot of friends and be like, hey, do you remember that time? And what happened? And I had the benefit of a Marine Corps historical book that was written that documented a lot of what we did. But yeah, just so you can remember, the next, for your kids or loved ones, somebody to have some idea of what you did. And then absolutely to think about publishing it. So I think I mentioned it last time, but I work with a group called the Lethal Minds Journal. And we want to probably put out a magazine electronically every month. And every month, it's only veterans writing poetry,
nice.
Photography. We do have like arts and things like that, but fiction, nonfiction, whatever. We work with you. So you send in something and we might say to ourselves, man, this could use some work, but we won't tell you that. Right? One of the editors will sit there and go through it and not only hopefully make edits, but tell you why. Like, hey man, if you word the sentence this way, it's better, or here's why it, maybe, sometimes we're, moving paragraphs around and sending it back, and we go back and forth with you as many times as you're willing to go.
What's the name of this again?
The Lethal Minds Journal. And it runs the gamut from kind of intel reports to, things that are current, to read, but short stories, poetry, like I said, almost anything. And we won't, you'll give up on yourself before we give up on you, right? with something. It may take some doing, but the Lethal Minds Journal, I think .com. It's on Substack.
Awesome. I'll plug that on the episode description along with the book.
Yeah, please do. You can follow them on Instagram. They are pretty active on there, and that's a great place to submit things. But yeah, I think all of us, like you said, all of us have stories, and they're all unique stories. It doesn't matter that it's not, it's pulling Saddam Hussein out of a hole, right? There's only so many people that do that. Yeah, there's only so many that have that story. There's so many people that shot Bin Laden. Now, there seems like a lot, all right? It seems like
every week
there's only about 500 SEALs that were the first guy to shoot Bin Laden. But
I have a confession to make. I haven't said it before, but I'll say it on air. I too killed Osama bin Laden.
But I mean, you're like you said, your stories are yours, right? They're the kind of what make you, and they, there are other people that, even if they're the story of being an admin clerk and sitting on a fob. All right. There are other people that are going to do that or wanted to do that or whatever that could benefit from those. And it's just, there are people like me and you that like to read those stories and see, how war experience impacts different people differently. One of the most interesting books I read recently was written by a Navy RP, a religious, basically like a chaplain bodyguard. And, it's kind of a fascinating another look at combat, all right, from a perspective that I've never ever seen or really imagined. So there's an unlimited, and plus Amazon has like 35 million books on it, right? There's always room for more. And it's, you're probably not, and I'm almost certainly not going to, retire off of the proceeds from Tough Rugged Bastards. But, it is a really, really cool feeling to know that, hey, I did this thing, and I've, other people are going to get the opportunity to read it, and maybe, think it sucks. Maybe it'll cause them to join the Marine Corps. Who knows?
Yeah. Hey, at the end of the day, even if they think it sucks, they paid for it. So, hey, judge away.
Please. Yeah, please do. Yeah. Well, if you pay for it, you can do whatever you want. Wipe your ass with it.
John, thank you so much for being here, brother. Thank you for writing this book and putting this story out there. All of us that grew up and were part of the GWAT, we got to see Det 1, not just from, as a kid hearing about this thing, then getting in the military, seeing it being brought in, and then now being out and having great friends that are MARSOC Raiders and being able to celebrate all the awesome stuff that you guys do, because we're part of the same cloth. We're like stepbrothers, because when it comes to operations and it comes to like the way you guys meld, like Green Berets and MARSOC are like just almost identical in everything. And we're just the knuckleheaded stepbrothers in the special operations world. So proud to have you on the show. I can't wait for the book to release. It comes out Monday, August 19th. So please go get it. Go to the episode description right now so you can get your advanced copy. And to all you tuning in, thank you for being here with us. And we'll see you all again next time. Till then, take care.
Take care. Thank you.
If you like what we're doing and you're enjoying the show, don't forget to share us, like us, subscribe. And remember, we get through this together. Take care.